So guys, in our previous three sessions, we have completed filters, right? What are filter, how to use filter, what is the filter execution order, what is the difference between middleware component and the filter, which one to use at what scenario. So we have completely demonstrate with practical, or you can say both using the layman understandable example as well as the from the real-time development point of view. So today what we are going to discuss one of the important concept that is repository design part. So first of all, I will show you what are the different data access technologies provided by Microsoft, and then I will start with the, designing the application. See, whatever applications we have developed till now, we have not used the repository design button. So before understanding the repository design pattern, first of all, we need to understand what is the drawback if we are not using the repository design button. So the first example I will start, right? So basically, I'm going to develop a completely real-time application, starting with the development without using repository pattern. Then I'm going to show you how to use repository design pattern. Again, the repository design pattern can be used in three ways. What are the ways? One is the non-generic, or you can say specific repository pattern. Another one is the generic repository design pattern. Another one is the hybrid approach. Hybrid approach means it is the combination of generic as well as non-generic, or you can say specific. So once these three approaches are completed, then I will also show you how you can implement a unit of work, right? Unit of work along with repository pattern to implement a transaction management. Transaction management means what? Now, if you are having multiple repositories, then how you can use a single DbContext object to perform database operation on multiple repositories by applying the do everything or do nothing principle. Either all the operations should succeed completely or none of them. So for that purpose, we are going to make use of unit of work. So basically, we'll start with without using repository. Then I will show you how to use non-generic. Then I will show you how to use generic. Then I will show you how to use combined approach. And finally, we'll complete or conclude with the unit of work part. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
So before understanding, this repository design pattern, so before that, can anybody tell me what are the different data access technologies provided by Microsoft?
ADO.NET and Entity Framework.
Yes, ADO.NET is there, Entity Framework is there. Apart from these two, anything else is there?
Dapper.
Yes, Dapper is also there. So can you please explain me the difference between these three approaches, ADO.NET, Entity Framework, and Dapper? If someone, suppose you are attending the interviewer might ask you this question. So what are the different data access technologies provided by Microsoft to communicate with the database? Definitely, you will tell ADO.NET Core, Dapper, and the Entity Framework Core. Then you might get the reverse question. Can you please elaborate the difference between these three approaches? Which one is going to give best performance, right? Which one is going to provide various features, right? What is the difference between these three approaches?
ADO.NET supports only SQL Server and Entity Framework
Everyone, see, every approach going to support SQL Server.
But the what we code written for the ADO.NET to access the database for SQL Server, it's a specific set of providers, and in Entity Framework code, what you write the code to access the database. So it is applicable for all the databases, but we need to install the respected data provider packages.
Yeah, see, that is not the difference. So whatever uh, technology you are going to use, for that specific packages you need to install. So you should not tell that we are going to install different packages for different data access technology, right? So what is the difference means? Now, if I'm using ADO.NET Core, then I have to write SQL statement specific to the database. So whatever the raw SQL statement I'm going to write, that raw SQL statement should be specific to the database. For example, if I'm going to use SQL Server database, then the SQL statement, whatever I'm going to write using the SQL statement using ADO.NET Core, that must be specific to SQL Server. That means we need to follow the SQL Server syntax and the rules and regulations. Similarly, if the database is changed from SQL Server to MySQL, then again what we need to do? Then again we need to change the TSQL statement, whatever we have written, that should be executed and understood by MySQL. Similarly, for Oracle, that means what? If I'm using ADO.NET Core, when the backend database is changed, then TSQL statement, whatever I'm writing, that needs to be changed. Again, if I'm creating some kind of storage procedure in the database, then that storage procedure is also going to be changed. What exactly it means? It means the TSQL statement or storage procedure, what we created for SQL Server, that is not going to be executed on MySQL. If I'm creating a MySQL, that is not going to be executed on Oracle and SQL Server. That means that the TSQL and the PLSQL, if you are talking about storage procedure function, this is popularly called as a PLSQL. So they are specific to the database. And if I'm using ADO.NET Core, then what needs to I have? I should have a strong or a good understanding of the specific database related syntaxes. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? And ADO.NET is definitely right. Among all these three approaches, ADO.NET is going to give you the best performance. Right? ADO.NET is going to give you the best performance because there is no overhead to converting the LinQ query to the database. If I'm using Entity Framework Core, I have to write LinQ queries. That LinQ query will be converted into SQL. So that conversion from LinQ to SQL is definitely going to take some time, which we can reduce, right? Or which is not available with ADO.NET Core. So ADO.NET Core definitely going to give you better performance comparing to other approaches. But the thing is that with ADO.NET Core, so we have to write lots of repetitive code. So wherever I want to perform some operation, then again I have to create the connection object, create the command object, execute the reader object, right? Whatever. So this SQL connection command data reader, I have to repeat multiple times at multiple locations where I have to use ADO.NET Core. That means there is lots of repetitive code. And definitely, whenever you are going with some repetitive kind of code, there is a chance of error prone. There is a chance of, right, for example, if you want to modify something, so you might be doing the modification in some places, you might be forget to do the modification in some other places. So there is a chance that you might get some unexpected output. Now coming to Entity Framework Core, it is a completely ORM approach. ORM approach means Object Relational Mapper. So with Entity Framework Core, this repetitive code, whatever we are creating, SQL connection, command, data reader, all these things are going to be handled by framework only. With Entity Framework Core, we are not bothering about the backend database, whether the database is SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, MongoDB, whatever it may be. We are not bothering. What we need to know, we should know LinQ queries. So if you are having good knowledge on a LinQ, right, then you can effectively write the statements, right, which mostly you are writing in the SQL Server. For example, joining, grouping, sorting, filtering, right, selecting specific columns, right. So all these things you can also achieve you in your .NET Core application or .NET application by writing LinQ command. So in that case, right, Entity Framework Core will handle the other things, right? Handle the other things means what? Now, how to execute the command, how to convert the command into specific database, how to retrieve the data from the database, how to implement some additional or new features, right? For example, with Entity Framework Core, we can implement lazy loading, we can implement eager loading, we can implement change tracking, right? So these are the features which is available with the Entity Framework Core, but these are not available with the ADO.NET Core. Because in ADO.NET Core, we don't have that option called lazy loading, eager loading, explicit loading, change tracking, right? So these are the things which are not available. These things completely available with the Entity Framework Core. So Entity Framework Core not only give the flexibility, right, to work with multiple different kind of databases, but also it provides some of the approaches which are not available with the ADO.NET, right? So Entity Framework definitely, if I'm going to compare the performance between ADO.NET Core and the Entity Framework Core, performance-wise, ADO.NET Core is going to give little bit better performance, but that is going to be negligible with Entity Framework Core. Why? Because the lots of benefits what we are getting with Entity Framework Core, that benefit is going to be right ignored, right? So now, so we know Entity Framework Core. For Entity Framework Core, it is a completely what I can say ORM package. ADO.NET Core, completely manual mechanism. Manual mechanism means what? Now, in that case, if you are executing on the storage procedure, whatever the data it return, that data we need to look through the reader. We need to create our .NET object manually. We need to populate that .NET object manually. That means that manual mapping is required with the ADO.NET Core. But with the Entity Framework Core, that manual mapping is not required, right? Because automatically we are using what I can say duplicate properties, which is nothing but representing our .NET entity, and the data automatically mapped to these entities. That is fine. But now what we need, see, if I'm going with the entity framework, it is a completely package. Now, so this Dapper, what we are going to use, it is going to be a lightweight ORM framework. Lightweight ORM framework means what? Now, all the features, whatever available with Entity Framework Core, we don't require. So what is my requirement? My requirement is I want to write the TSQL statement. I want to write the storage procedure because the TSQL statement or storage procedure, whatever I'm writing, that is definitely going to give you better performance. But at the same time, I want to use the ORM framework to write so that whatever the data written by the database, right, that should automatically map to .NET object. That means I want to take some of the part from ADO.NET Core, that is writing the TSQL statement storage procedure. Some of the part of Entity Framework Core that is automatically mapped to our .NET object. It is nothing but what right Dapper is going to provide. But with the Dapper, we will not get those advanced features like change tracking, right, like the entity states, like the lazy loading, ego loading. So this is not available with Dapper. But Dapper means it is a lightweight ORM framework. ORM framework means the entity framework is ORM framework. Dapper is lightweight. ADO.NET is a completely manual process. Clear? What are the different data access technologies?
Yes.
Right. So now if someone asks you, you have to answer in this way, right? So now, why entity framework core is preferred in model? Definitely productivity, because as a developer, we are going to reduce the repetitive code. So you can write more code. Maintainability means you do not need to worry about the backend database, right? Whatever maybe the backend database, we are not bothering. We need to learn LNQ and we need to write the code. Flexibility means yes, we can define the database relationship, right, in our .NET model, right? Whenever we are defining the model or entities, we can define the relationship between entities. All these things are possible, right? Easily integrate means what? Yes, whatever it may be, right? If you are developing any .NET Core application, Entity Framework Core easily integrated. They are also providing the migration support. For example, if you are developing the models today, tomorrow if you are doing the modification to your existing schema, then this schema can be updated right into the database by using the concept called database migration. Community and support means currently, right guys, remember .NET, there is active community called GitHub, or many organization developers, individual developers, they are giving their right contribution to the growth of an entity framework core. So because of this reason, right, nowadays, whatever the new applications are being developed using .NET or .NET Core, they are focusing or they are using Entity Framework Core as their primary data access technology. Clear?
Yes.
Right now. Now, as we are going to develop, or as we are going to learn repository design pattern. So before understanding what is repository design pattern, first we need to understand what are the different layer of our application and where this repository layer fit in our application development. See, this is my presentation layer. Presentation layer means what? The layer which will expose the endpoint. Whenever I'm talking about ASP.NET Core Web API application, in that case, controller is going to expose some API endpoints, and these endpoints are going to be consumed by the client. So for client, who is the presentation layer? For client, the presentation layer is the API controller, right? So once the request comes to API controller, right, then API controller main job is to write and navigate the request, right, which service layer to be executed, what data to be written, right? So all these things are going to be handled by the controller, right? So once the controller request comes, then it will invoke the service layer. In the service layer, your main business application logic is going to be executed. So business logic means what? So for example, if you are going to place one order, what will be the order amount, what discounts to be applied, what is the right order, how to generate the order number. So this is nothing but your business logic. Whatever the order amount is valid, whatever the product, right, the user trying to purchase, whether that product stock is available or not. So checking all these things is nothing but the job of your business logic layer, or you can say service layer. So once the request comes to service layer, the service layer is going to validate everything, right? So validate everything means he will make ready that everything is ready, right, ready. Whatever data needs to be stored, that data is also ready within the service layer. So from the service layer, right, then it will invoke the repository layer. So this is the repository layer, or you can say the repository pattern what we are going to launch. So this repository layer, you can see it is coming after the service layer and before the data access layer. Sir, what is the difference between repository layer and the data access layer? See, whenever you are developing the application, whatever entities you are created, and your DbContext class, that DbContext class provided DbContext instance, that is nothing but your data access layer. So using that DbContext instance, using the dbset properties, you can perform the CRUD operation, database CRUD operation. So in case of a layered architecture, so whenever we are speaking about data access layer, so you can consider data access layer is nothing but your DbContext object and the related entities, whatever you created, and for whichever entities you want to create the database table. So this is nothing but your database access layer. So now between the service layer and the data access layer, we are having this repository layer. So what is the benefit of this repository layer? It is provides some kind of abstraction. It provides some kind of a loosely coupling. So what is abstraction? What is loosely coupling? We'll see practically. What is the drawback? We'll see practically, because we are going to start developing the application, right? Starting with, I'm going to start the application development, fast application without using repository pattern, so that I can show you the drawback of not using repository design pattern. So this repository design pattern will get the request from service layer, and this repository design pattern will take the responsibility to perform the CRUD operations, right? So by using this data access layer, he will perform the CRUD operation. So how it is going to work practically, I'm going to show you. So basically in a layered architecture, your request will be received by the presentation layer, or you can say API layer. And API layer will forward that request to service layer, where your main core business logic is going to be executed. And this service layer now will not use this DbContext instance directly to perform the CRUD operation. So instead, you will make use of this repository layer. So what is the benefit of using this repository war? We'll see. But before that, we need to understand what is the drawback of not using that repository layer. So which we will also discuss. Clear?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right. So this code duplication tight coupling, right? I will show you practically. So let us right understand this with one example. See, guys, whatever the differences, these are I'm not discussing at this point of time, because I want to discuss this thing practically. So practically, I will create the example, and practically I will demonstrate what is the drawback of not using repository design pattern. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a e-commerce application for demonstration purpose, and that e-commerce application going to manage category, product, customer, order, and order item. So basically you can consider order processing for processing the order and the product data, whatever the information is required. So by taking those information, we'll try to demonstrate that repository design pattern. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I will create one e-commerce API, and that API is going to deal with SQL Server database using entity framework core. But without using, initially I'm going to show you without using repository pattern. So let me go ahead and create the project. So let me go ahead. Create one ASP.NET Core Web API project. Choose the location wherever you want to create the project. Okay. So this will create a ASP.NET Core Web API project. Now, what we need to do, as we are going to work with the Entity Framework Core and the backend database is SQL Server, the respective data provider we need to install. So one is this one. So this will provide the Entity Framework Core support for a SQL Server database. So let me go ahead and install this package. So you have to write install package and whatever your package name, this will install the package in the PMC package manager console window. Then we need to install this package. This package will support the database migration. So basically you can use add migration, update database. So that your application and the database, they are going to be in a sync. So these are the two packages which are required for ASP.NET Core application to communicate with the SQL Server database. So now what I need to do is I need to define the connection string. And where I need to define the connection string, generally we need to define the connection string in the offsetting standardization application. So e-commerce DB. So as I have already created, okay, let me delete this one. So this is going to be my database. So database is the e-commerce DB, which is going to be created on this server. So this is my second step. Next, what we need to define, right? As we are going to work with multiple model, right? Entities, you can say category, product, customer order, and order item. So next, what we need to do is we need to define the entities. We'll define all these five entities. We'll define the relationship between these five entities. And we are also going to create the DbContext class by registering all these entities at DbSet properties. Also, we are going to provide the initial seed data for the testing purpose. So basically, I'm going to create five entities. And these five entities will be registered as five DbSet properties in the DbContext class. Also, for these entities, I'm going to provide some testing data. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a folder called models in the project root directory. And inside that model, we are going to create these entities, right? So you can give the folder name as model entities, anything is fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder called model. So whatever models required for our application, all these models I'm going to store here. So let me start with the category. Category is basically going to group entities, right? Group products. So group product means you might have a multiple product that belongs to a particular category, right? Then for the like apparel, right? So different categories there, and for each category, whichever products are belonging to, for grouping those products, we need this category model, right? So this is going to be a master table. So let me create this one. So here you can see this is going to my category ID, which is going to my primary key. See, in this case, if you are using this key attribute, that is fine. If you remove this key attribute, then also it is going to be fine. Why? Now we are following the naming convention, that is ID or category plus ID, which is going to be the primary key. So if you are giving a different name for your primary key, then it is mandatory to use this key attribute. If you are following the default naming convention which is satisfied for the primary key, then this is optional. So if you optional means it is not mandatory, but if you give that key attribute, that is also fine. So this is my name, category name, and this is my description, optional description. And for each category I can have 0, 1 or n number of product. That is, you can see that products is going to be a optional product. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the product entity, which is going to store the actual product, which is going to be purchased by the customer. So let me go ahead and create the product entity. See here you can see product ID, my unique key, what is the product name, what is the product description, price, what is the category. Category means this category ID it is pointing to, it is going to be foreign key, and it is a non-null foreign key. Means you cannot create a product without the category ID, right? Here you can see I have not applied the foreign key column, and each product, right? Whenever each product can be part of multiple order. I mean, one product can be applied as part of a order item store. So basically, whenever the customer going to place an order, we are going to create the order entity as well as the order item. So that order item is going to store the line items. For one order, if you are purchasing three products, then those three product information it is going to store in the order items table. That is the reason why one product ID can right, occur multiple times in the order items entity, right? So that is what we are also going to create in some time. So the customer means this is the main entity which is going to purchase, right? So one customer can have multiple orders. So let us create the entity. So here you can see it should have the basic information, customer ID, full name, email, and one customer can have multiple orders. So that is what I'm using. And here I'm putting this question mark to make it optional. That means it is possible that one customer might not have any order. When the customer registered initially, he doesn't have any order. So that is the reason why that order is going to be optional. So next one is the order entity. Whenever the customer purchase or place an order, that order information, the aggregate information, it is going to store in the order entity, and the detailed information it is going to store in the order item entity. So let me go ahead and create the order entity first. So here you can say order ID, order date, whichever customer placing the order, what is the order amount, and right, and this customer we should place it here because this will make sense. So customer ID and that navigation property for creating the foreign key, right? Then this is order amount, and this is going to my list of order items. So next or the last entity or model what we are going to create is order item. So let me go ahead and create this entity, order item. So this order item entity is going to store right, the list of order items for a particular order. So definitely we should have this order ID. So which is going to be tell right whether this particular line item belongs to which order. That reference key is here. Product ID one order ID can have multiple product ID. That product ID information we are also storing here. How much quantity you purchase and what is the unit price while purchasing the order. So this is the right. So these are the entities right which we have discussed many times in our development, right? So till now, I hope with these entities we have used at multiple times in our. So you should not have any confusion or query. Anyone having any query related to this model, they can ask me if they are not understanding anything. I'm not discussing what is the use of a what is the use of a range, what is the use of this foreign key, what is the use of this column attribute. I'm not discussing this thing. Why I'm not discussing? Because we have discussed this thing many times, right, in our previous session. But today, our main focus is not discussing this required range column attribute. What is our main focus? Understanding the repository pattern. And for that purpose, and what is the use of this attribute, data annotation attribute, all these things we have discussed already. Clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Next we are going to create the, see, this model, whatever we are created, it is part of our data access layer, right? So next what I need to do, I need to create the DbContext. So this is this data folder what I'm created. Within this data folder, I'm going to create my application context object, that is the DbContext object. So this DbContext object is also part of our data access layer because using this DbContext object, we can perform the CRUD operation. So let me go ahead and create this one. So this is my context object inheriting from DbContext. I'm registering all my entities as a DB set properties. You can see categorize product, customer orders and order items. I'm following the plural naming conventions, right? You can see I'm using the pluralized name of the entity to be created as the database table. So here what I'm doing, I'm defining the relationship. for order and order items, right? Between order and order items, there is one to many relationship. One order can have multiple order items. And here, what I'm doing here, why I'm defining C, even though this relationship is automatically found here. Here you can see order having this right list of order items, and each order item can belongs to particular. So that one to many relationship is already there. But here, what I'm doing here, I'm trying to make you understand the on delete cascade behavior. What exactly it means? So when I set this on delete cascade behavior, so when the order is order entity is deleted, the corresponding order items entities are also going to be deleted automatically, right? So that is the reason why I'm right defining the relationship here. So here I'm registering some master data for the category ID 1, 2, 3, some product master data ID 1, 2, 3, some customer master data ID 1, 2, 3. I have created two order, one order with ID 1, second one is ID 2 for this customer 1 and 2. And for each order, right, you can see for first order, I have registered, right, I have purchased two order, product. And for the second order also, we are having rated two product items, right? So these are going to be my master data. Clear?
Yeah.
Right, so this is what we have discussed, right? So next, what we need to do, we need to inject the DbContext into the program.cs class file. So let me go ahead. So this is my program.cs class file. So let me go ahead and configure this thing. Okay, let me remove. See, here what I'm doing, I'm registering my controller services, and here I'm disabling my camel case naming convention. Whatever the property name we defined, like customer ID, full name, email, they will be kept as it is. The second one is I'm registering my DbContext to use SQL Server connection string. Right, and this is my DbContext, and the DbContext is going to use SQL Server connection string, and the connection string will get from the configuration file. So offsetting strategization file, and inside that offsetting strategization file, we should have a connection string section, and that connection string section should have this e-commerce DB connection. That is what I have provided here. Clear?
Yes.
Right? And in this case, this add DbContext to whatever we register, that is going to be scoped service by default. So there are three different types of services. One is a scoped service, that is one request, one instance per request. Another is transient. Each time you access, it will create a new instance. For example, within a single request, if you request for two times, so two instances is going to be created. And one is a singleton. Doesn't matter how many number of request comes, only one instance is available. So that is going to be singleton. And it is recommended whenever you are creating some services, if that services is going to deal with the database performing some IO operations, then it is better to use a scoped service. Right? So that is what I have done here. So once this is done, right, next what I'm going to do is, right, I'm going to generate the migration file. So how to generate the migration file? So you know this very well. So open this package manager console command window, clear the screen, add MIGRATION, add migration, whatever name you want to give, you can give. So it will build your project. If everything is fine, then it will create the migration file. Still processing. Okay. So this is done. Now what I need to do, I need to generate the database. So for that purpose, I need to use this update database command. So click on this update database command in the PMC window. So you can see whatever the right script are generated in the debug window. Fine. So now if you verify the database, you should have the e-commerce DB database, and inside this database you should have this table. Now if you want to see the data, then whatever the seed data we have provided, they are also going to be stored in the database, right? So all the data you should see. Clear?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes.
Right? So till now what we have discussed, what is right, what are the different data access technologies, at what layer, right, that repository partner will come into the picture, and the project share. So first, first what we are going to discuss, but we will be discussing uh, the application. I mean, first we will develop the application without using repository partner, and then we'll see what are the problems. See, if you are developing the application, without using repository pattern, then what are the problem? The problem is tight coupling. Tight coupling means if you are using the DbContext in the service class, or if you are using DbContext in the controller class, then that controller class and the DbContext, they are tightly coupled. There might be possible that, for example, there is something called category entity, product entity, customer entity, and you want to perform some basic CRUD operation, get all, get by ID, insert, update, delete. Then this operations code you need to repeat multiple times. And again, if you are using DbContext object directly in the controller class or the service class, unit testing is very difficult. Unit testing is a very important concept, which we will discuss after repository pattern. So that unit testing is very, very difficult to achieve without repository pattern. And maintenance is going to be very difficult. Why? Now, you are going to mix up your business logic layer, your application logic layer, and the data access layer completely in a single place. So everything means it is you are completely following, right? You are not following the separation of concern principle, you are not following the SRP principle, single responsibility principle. That means if you are not following the separation of concern, or if you are not following the SRP principle, means what? Maintaining that application code is going to be very difficult, right? And the scalability issue means if your application it grows, if you want to extend the application with new feature, new flexibility, right? Enhancing the features, that is going to be very, very difficult. So how is this going to be difficult? So we'll see practically, right? So what I'm going to do is, so currently, how many entities are there? Right? Currently, we are having 5 entities. So category, customer, order items, and the product. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 4 controllers. Right? So guys, remember, as per industry standard, controller means it is a class. As per industry standard, controller means it is also a class. And as per single responsibility principle, how many of you know solid design principle? Guys, how many of you are aware about solid design principle?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, wherever.
Okay. So in solid design principle, out of 5 principles, the S stand for single responsibility principle. So what do you mean by single responsibility principle? Can anyone tell me the official or book definition of
Have
this?
only one responsibility.
It should have
Okay.
only one responsibility.
Yes.
So it should not have only one responsibility. So that is wrong. The class should have only one reason to change. So one responsibility means, do you think that I'm defining a class and that class going to have only one method?
No.
Do you think that if I'm defining one class, one responsibility means, do you think that that class going to have only one method, or it can have multiple method?
Can
It can have multiple methods, but one reason to change.
Yes. So one reason to change means what? Now, if I'm defining a class for category, then category related operations I can put inside that class. And whenever there is a change for category related things, then only I need to change that category class. Getting my point? Similarly, if I'm having the product class, then that product class can have multiple method if these method are related to product. And I need to change that product class only when there is a need to change the product related operations. So basically, single responsibility principle doesn't mean that the class can have only one method. The class can have multiple methods if these methods are related to that particular responsibility. Means similarly, if I'm going to define the category related operations, then I should have a category controller. If I'm going to define a product related operation, I should have a product controller. If I'm going to define customer related operations, then I should have a customer controller. Similarly, if I'm going to define order related operation, like creating order, modifying the order, updating the order status, Then for that purpose, I need to have the order controller. Similarly, if I'm going to deal with payment related operations, I should have a payment controller. So basically, if you look at these things, right, in this case, category, customer, order items, and product. So for these 5 entities, I have to create 4 controllers. So sir, you might have one question. Sir, 5 entities are there. Then why 4 controllers? So in this case, this order and order items, they can't exist independently. So if I'm talking about order items, definitely it is going to be part of a order entity only. So I will create the order controller, and that order controller not only going to manage the data in the order entity, but also it is going to manage the data in the order item entity, because this is order is the aggregate type and this order item is its detailed representations. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes.
So first let me delete this weather forecast controller, which is very right, which is not required for our application, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a controller. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop the application without using repository pattern. Means what? Means I'm going to use a DbContext object directly within the controller class. See, if you want, you can create a service class, but that is fine. But here, what I'm going to show you as a fresher, right? When you start developing the application, what you generally do is what I'm going to show you. See, in this case, this category controller, right? Here you can see I have registered the DbContext instance. So that is going to be the scoped service. So the framework will create one instance for each request, and that instance will be injected to this controller via the constructor. That is going to be taken care by the framework. Now, this DbContext instance we provided to this category controller. Now, here you can see get categories, get all categories. I have access context.categories. Here get category by ID. So if you are getting confusion, get category by ID. So get all categories. So give the name something like this. Get all categories. Get category by ID. So this is going to be create a new category. So checking the model state if it is valid. Creating adding that category to the right categories collection. Calling the step changes method. This is going to be update category. So I'm not going with the logic. Why I'm not going with the logic? This logic is a very known to you guys, right? So what is the if ID and the category ID is not matched, then what error message I need to return? If the model state is invalid, then what error message I need to return? Then for updating the data, first of all, I need to validate whether the ID is exist in the database or not. If it is not exist, then what error message I need to return? If it exists, then whatever the existing data, their name and description I need to update. After update, then you can call this step changes method. Mark the entity modified is not mandatory here, right? So here, this statement is not mandatory, but a good programming practice to call this update method. Why? Because, right, if you are using, right, if you are not using as no tracking here, then that this existing category object is already tracked by the context object. So if you do some modification, automatically he identify right, the data is modified, so automatically he will right set the entity state as modified, so no need to call this statement. But yes, if you are calling, that is also fine. Similarly, this is my delete async method, which is going to check whether the ID, right, whatever the category ID you want to delete is available or not. If not available, not, right, not found. If available, call the remove method and then call the step changes method. Clear? So this is the general CRUD operations of what we have discussed so far, right? Anyone having any query? Clear or not?
Yeah, clear.
Clear, sir.
Right? So as a fresher, right, when you start learning, you might be writing the code in this manner, and that is what I'm showing. So I'm starting with right from the 0 year of experience. Student fresher, right, whatever their experience, according to their experience, they start designing the project in this manner only. Clear? Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Clear.
Next. Right. Similarly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the rest of the controller code. Right. I'm not going to right discuss each controller code. Right. So that is what you need to understand. Right. I'm only going to give you the overall picture, whatever the controllers I have created. See, this is my product controller. So get all products. So let me give this method name as get all products. So this is going to my products controller. Get all products, include as no tracking. Okay, so this category controller we have changed. So let me first change this one. Get all product, get product by ID. So this is going to be get all product, get product by ID, create a product, update product, and a delete product. So this is my product controller. Let me save this one. So similarly, whatever the categories method name we have changed, that what we need to put here also. Okay. The next controller what we are going to create is customers controller for performing the database CRUD operations over the customer's data. So let me go ahead and create a controller. Again, this is also going to have the same set of operations. See, here you can see this is going to my customer controller, inserting the context object, get customers. Okay, let me give this name as get all customers, get customer by ID, give this name as get customer by ID. This is create a customer, this is update customer, and this is going to be my delete customer. The logic is the same, right? Whatever the logics we have written in one controller, the same logic we have written. So this is what you can say my customers controller. Let me replace this one. The final one is going to my orders controller, which is going to create the order. So let me go ahead and create a class file for the order controller. Right. See, so here get all orders. So get all orders. So this is going to by get all orders. So whatever order place for the admin purpose, you can retrieve all orders. So this is get order by ID. So based on the order ID, you can retrieve the data. Here you can see while I'm fetching the orders, I'm including the order items, and also I'm going to include the product entity. So what is the difference between include and then include? Can anybody tell me? So what type of loading it is going to implement? Eager loading or lazy loading?
Eager loading.
Eager loading. Fine. So when to use this include and when to use this then include method?
The order and order items are directly related, and the product and the order is indirectly related via the order items, so that we use
In the
then
orders
include.
table, exactly. In the orders entity, whatever the direct rate relational object are there, like if you look at the order entity. So in the order entity, I have the customer and right navigation code. So I can directly access the customer information. I can access the order items information. But in the order entity, I do not have the product navigation property. So I cannot access that product directly using include. But for product link, right, you can see in the order item, we have the product reference property. So in that case, by using then include from the order items, I can access the product. Clear? So if a direct related entity, you can use include. Indirectly means you have to use then include. And again, that then include where you need to place. Now you have to place from where you have a link. So this is going to my get order by ID. This is going to my create order. See, in this case, you can see, first of all, we are validating whether the customer exists or not. Then we are checking whether all the orders are available in the stock or not. Then we are calculating the order amount, order date, right? Everything. Then we are adding the order and calling the set changes method. Similarly, I'm updating the data, model state valid or not, order ID mismatch or not, right? Order exists or not, right? Then customer exists or not, then updating each order items, and all these things we have provided, updated customer ID, order date, order amount, list of existing order, right? Existing order items, if nothing, if something exists, they have to remove, and then again we have to add the updated existing orders, right? So that is what we have discussed. So this is my delete order. which is going to take the order ID and then delete the order. So now this is what we have discussed. I'm not going through the logic. Logic you can read. I will share the document. You can have a look on the logic part. So here I'm not going to discuss the logic. Rather than my main intention is to make you understand the repository pattern. Now, what is the problem? So controller take too many responsibility. Is now the controller having too many responsibility? Yes or no? Is the controller taking the incoming HTTP request? Yes. Is the controller doing the validation part? Yes. Is the controller doing the business logic part? Yes. Is the controller right here doing the data access logic part? Yes. That means not only doing the validation, but also I'm deciding the business logic. For example, calculating the order amount, order date, right? So this is nothing but your business logic. So this is nothing but your business logic. So business logic we are writing, validation we are writing, validation we can understand. But why we are writing the business logic? Why we are writing the data access logic, right? This context dot customer, saving the data, removing the data, updating the data. Why we are putting all these things? So all these things means we are strictly mixing multiple responsibility. Now you just take me one example. Suppose one restaurant is there, the waiter is there, the waiter will take the order from the client, the waiter will cook the food, the waiter will serve the food, the waiter will take the bill. A single waiter is there, he's doing all these things. So if there is a less number of, right, if there is less number of customer, he can handle. But when the customer count, number of customer is increases. So if one customer coming in 30 minutes, he can do this thing. But within 30 minutes, if there is 30 customer, then can the waiter handle every customer properly?
No, no.
Yes or no?
No.
No. No. So basically, if we are putting multiple things within the same controller means we are overloading that controller. Later on, right, if we want to change something, right, change something means some business logic we need to change. Then again, we need to come to this order controller, right, which should not be the case. That means we should not put too many responsibility on the control. Repeated code and lost opportunity of reuse, right? For example, if you see this right validation, right, check whether the exist order is exist or not. So this logic, whatever we have written here, is the same logic I have written here. See, here I'm writing a different syntax, but the fundamental thing is that checking whether the right entity exists or not. That means what? Now again, if you look at this product controller, again the similar type of logic I have written here or not? Yes, it might be working with the products entity, it might be working with the order entity, but the way we have written the code, it is going to be some similar. That means what? If we are putting everything in the same entity, right? Then, right? For example, right? For example, here you can see I am checking this whether the customer exists or not. That this is the logic I have written. And now, if you come to this part, again, I'm writing the same logic or not here. Yes or
Yeah,
no?
yeah, yeah,
That
yes,
means there is a code repetition or not.
yeah, yes,
So, for example, if I want to update the logic, I mean that query, then I need to figure out at what places I have written this logic. Go to the
yeah,
places one by one and do the changes. If you forgot in some places, then what will happen? That means we should not have any code repeated. So first is controller taking too many responsibility. Second one is we have the repeated code. Third one is difficult adding cross-cutting functions. For example, now, right, what you have done, now I want to implement caching. Now I want to implement what I can say logging. So for that purpose, what I need to do, I need to go to every where, right? Here I need to write the logging caching. Here I need to write the logging caching. So why should I repeat this thing? That logging logic, the caching logic should not be part of our controller. That means we should handle this thing in a better manner. So this is not what the industry standard code. So we are having lots of problem, lots of responsibility, mixing responsibility, duplicating code. There is a no better way to put the logging logic. There is no better way to put the caching logic, right? So we should not have this thing. Challenge with the testing and the maintenance. For example, you have directly written this context object here. Now this context object is targeting your database, original database. You want to implement a mock test, unit test, then very difficult to achieve within right using this type of logic. Clear?
Yeah, yeah. Clear, sir.
Yeah. So these are the problem, right? So you can see the busy waiter who also cooks and clean. The example I have given, right? The one person, right? For example, your home having multiple issues, electrical issue, plumber issue, right? Some right carpenter issue, and you hire someone who is doing all these things, right? So you can see the multi-talented people. If the same person doing this job, and all these things, right? Then imagine, right, if it is taking less time, right, fixing the issue immediately is fine. But if each responsibility is going to take more time, then can he handle all this responsibility in time? No. So basically, for each responsibility, we should hire a proper person, right? For plumbing, there should be a proper plumber. For electrician, there should be proper electrician, and same in the case of a carpenter, right? So we should not right put multiple responsibility on a single person. Yes, sometimes right in cricket, the all-rounder role is fine, but that all-rounder role in our software development is not fine. So in here, we should have single responsibility principle. We should follow clean separation of concerns. Clear? Clear?
Yeah, clear. Clear, sir.
So what is the better alternative? The better alternative, like just like a good restaurants, they hire specialized chefs, they hire specialized waiter, cleaner, right? And in homemaker, you may hire separate plumber, electrician, carpenter, right? So software project benefits greatly, right? If you are developing a software project, if you separate this constancy into distinct layer, then you will get the benefit, right? So controller layer will focus on handling the HTTP request and user interaction. The repository layer abstract and encapsulate all the data access logic. Services, they contains the business logic, right? So controller will only focus on handling the HTTP request. Services, they will contain the business logic, right? Whatever required for your application. And the repository pattern, right? Whatever we are created, he will take all the responsibility to communicate with the database. So this layer approach is exactly what repository pattern implements. So the repository pattern creates a dedicated data access layer with well-defined interfaces that hide the details of the database operation from the rest of the application. Right? So basically, to communicate with which database, how to communicate with the database, whether this is a mock database or original database, how the implementation is happening. So these things are going to be completely hidden from the controller and the services. The controller and the services, they are going to use the repository interface only. How that repository interface is implemented, who implemented that repository interface, how, whether the repository interface is implemented using ADO.NET, Entity Framework or Dapper, whether they are communicating with a SQL Server database, MySQL database, nothing is known to the front-end application. What they know, only the contract. That contract means the repository interface. That repository, how it is implemented, that is not the job of that what I can say. Uh, uh, that not the job of that controller or services. So next, what we are going to discuss, we'll discuss how to implement the repository pattern. So basically, I will start, or today I'm going to discuss how to implement that non-generic repository pattern. And tomorrow I will complete the remaining. Remaining means how to implement generic, hybrid approach combining generic and non-generic, and unit of one. So let us proceed and see how to implement non-generic repository pattern. So non-generic repository pattern or a right understanding. So first of all, let us try to understand what is repository pattern. The definition. The repository pattern is a software design pattern used to abstract and encapsulate the data access logic for an application. So how the data access logic is going to be communicated with the database, how it is going to perform the operation, so that is going to be encapsulated or abstracted from the rest of the application by the repository design part. So what exactly it means? It means it will act as a mediator between the application logic and the data source. So wherever you write the application logic, whether you write in the controller or whether you write in the service class, and the actual database. So between your application logic and the database, this intermediary part is nothing but your repository pattern, right? So without repository pattern, your controller, your service class, they directly communicate with the database using the context object. Now with repository pattern, the direct communication is not available. The controller or the business logic, they will use the repository pattern. That repository pattern will take the responsibility to communicate, right? Better understand, see, suppose currently in our application, the controller is there. The controller directly using the entity framework code DbContext to perform the database. Now with repository pattern, what will happen? The controller will use the repository interface. That repository interface will be implemented by that repository implementation class. That repository implementation class will use the DbContext to perform the database operation. Clear? So basically your controller and the database, directly the controller using DbContext to perform database without repository. With repository, your controller will use the repository interface, not the implementation. Will use the repository interface, and the controller have no idea how that interface is going to be implemented, who implemented, nothing is known to the controller. Whichever repository implementation implement this interface, that will use the DbContext class to perform the database operations. Right. Suppose if you take the example, right, of a library management system. The library system needs to add books, find books, update book, and remove old book. Instead of every librarian directly searching the big messy warehouse themselves, you have a specialized book manager. So you have a specialized book manager who knows exactly how to find and manage book efficiently. Librarian, that is business logic. So you can consider there are one is librarian, one is book manager. Librarian is nothing but your business logic. And the librarian asks the book manager nothing but your repository to the operation. Similarly, the controller, here you have to write the business logic. But this business logic have no idea how to perform, right, where the book is available, where to store the book, where to retrieve the book. Means what? They have no idea about the database and its related operations. So as a client, I will tell, hey, add this book. Right? As a librarian, I will tell the book manager, hey, book manager, please take this book and add this book. Where to add the book, how to add the book, that is not to book manager, not to the librarian. The same concept is here. Controller or the service layer or the business logic layer. They have the business logic. But where to store this business logic, how to store the business logic, how to retrieve the business logic, this information is not known to the controller or the business logic layer or the service layer. So that is known to your repository pattern, similar to your book. Clear?
Yep.
Right. So let us proceed and see how we can do this. Right, guys, remember, for each entity, we need to create a repository. For each entity, we need to create a repository in case of a non-generic or a specific repository pattern. So I'm starting with non-generic or specific. In case of a non-generic or a specific repository, we have to create a repository for each entity. That means we have to use for product entity, we will create iProduct repository and product repository. For category, I need to create iCategory repository and category repository, and similarly in the case of a customer and order. So this will provide the contract, and that contract is going to be implemented by the implementation class. Clear? Okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
if not clear at this point of time, don't worry, we'll see this thing practically, right? But guys, remember, if you are working with a web API and if you are not using a DTO, means you are not utilizing the core concept very effectively, right? So RESTful services means 100% you have to use DTO. DTO means what? Data transfer object. Data transfer object means what? Now, whatever the data required by the client and server for the communication purpose, only those data needs to be transferred. For example, in my database, I can have a table. The table can have 15 columns, but the client requirement only 5 columns. Then what? Then for that purpose, those 15 columns data I don't need to transfer to the client. Only the data which is required by the client, those information I need to send. Similarly, whenever I'm taking the data from the client, whatever the data required by the application, those data we need to take from the client. Unnecessary data we should avoid. So how we can do this thing? By using the concept called DTO, data transfer object, or you can say these are the lightweight version of our actual model. So the model similar to that ORM framework and entity framework and Dapper, here the actual model we have already created. And for those model, we'll create something called a DTO, which is going to contain the properties which are required by the client application and the server application. And the model what we have already created, this is for our client application and the database. So you have to remember from our .NET Core Web API application and database, we are using model or entities, or and for the client application, that might be Angular, that might be React, that might be a what I can say Android, iOS. For them and our application, whatever the data needs to be communicated, for that purpose, we need to use DTO. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'll define the DTOs for our application, right? So let me first create a folder called DTO in the project root directory. So inside that DTO folder, I'm going to create a few DTOs. And this DTO means for each entity, I'm going to create a DTO. So this is going to my category DTO. So whatever the data required for the category operation, so those data I'm going to store. So category ID, name, description. So this category ID, I'm making this as optional. So whenever I'm creating a category, so this is not mandatory, but for other things, this is mandatory, right? Similarly, right? And guys, remember here, I'm using the same category object for multiple operations, right? But in real time, you should have different category entity. Category create, category update, category delete, category response, right? So if you have attended our hotel management application, you might be know this thing, right? That for each operation, we should have a specific entity. Uh, right? Sorry, for each database table, we have a specific entity. But for that entity, we might be have multiple DTOs. For example, right, while creating a new category, I don't need this category DTO. So what you need to do, you need to create a category, create a DTO. And that DTO should not have this entity. For category update, this category ID is mandatory. So you have to apply that required attribute, right? So for now, right, I'm not giving focus on that DTO part. So that is the reason why I have created this entity. Clear? Clear, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So this is what we
Yes.
have already discussed, and you guys are already aware about those concepts, right? So next one is product DTO. So I'm creating this DTO similar to our actual entity, but here, product DTO. So here you can see I'm additionally adding this category name for the convenience purpose, right? Whatever the category ID that what I'm returning, and category human readable name also I'm going to return, and this is optional parameter. Next one is customer DTO. So whatever the information required for the customer related operations, that is customer full name, ID, email, that what I'm taking. Then the last one is order item DTO. So this order item DTO is going to store the line item of a particular order. So let me go ahead and create this one. So this is going to my order item DTO. The last one is order DTO. So which is going to store the customer order DTO. Okay. So that is fine. So before implementing non-generic repository pattern, you need to understand what is a repository. A repository is nothing but a class defined for an entity. A repository is a class defined for a specific entity with all the possible database operations. For example, we are having a product entity. For product entity, we can create a product repository. And that product repository is going to contain all the operations related to the product entity. So what are the common operations we can put inside a repository? That is get all and get all async. So get all means the synchronous version. Get all async means the asynchronous version. Get by ID, get by ID async, add async, update, delete, exit async, save and save async. So the meaning uh, fetching all the product, fetching product by ID, add a product, update product, delete product. Here you can have seen that I'm not adding that update async and delete async because right this save changes and save changes async is there. So whenever I'm adding a entity or deleting an entity, we are just updating that entity state, not on the database, but on the entity DbContext entity state. So when we call the save changes method, at that time it is going to make the changes permanent, right? So that is the reason why this update and delete method doesn't make any sense, right? To mark as a async. So exist async, if you want to check whether a particular product exists or not, save means this is actually going to update the data in the database. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to first create the repository interface, and this repository interface is going to define the method for each entity. And then for each repository, I'm going to create a separate implementation classes. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a folder called repositories. And inside this repository folder, I'm going to create all my repository interfaces. So let me go ahead and create a class file. So you can create an interface, uh, right? That is also fine. So, but later on you can also convert that to an interface. So here you can see get all async method, get by ID. So these two are asynchronous. That is the reason why return type is task. Add async, that is also return type is ask. So why I'm using add async? Because the DbContext provide that add async method, but the DbContext doesn't provide any asynchronous version to update or delete. So automatically that entity state will be marked as modified or deleted, right? And that is the reason why I'm not marking this as a task. So each exists async or asynchronously, you need to check whether the entity exists or not. This is going to be task save async. So in this case, this I category repository, it is going to do the database operation on which entity, guys? It is going to do the operation on the category entity. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Next, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same operation for the product repository. I need to do the same operation for the what I can say order repository and the customer repository. The same set of operations I'm defining. Later, as we progress, I will show you how to add customized functionality. That is also possible. That is what we will also discuss in our. Tomorrow only we are going to discuss. Next one is customer repository. So let me go ahead and create the customer repository. The same set of operation, but this time it is going to deal with the customer entity. And the final one is the order repository. Let me also go ahead and create the repository. So this is going to my order repository. See, get all, get by ID, add, update, delete, and all this. So that is fine. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide the implementation classes. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to create a folder within this repositories folder, and this is subfolder, right, going to contain all the implementation classes. So this is going to contain all the implementation classes. So for each repository, I need to create a implementation classes. For category repository, I'm going to deal with this uh, right. For I category repository, this category repository class is going to be there. It will inherit from the I category repository and for provide the implementation for all the category related functionality. So get all, get by ID, add, update, delete, exist, and save async. So all this method it is provided. First of all, it is taking the DbContext object. So DbContext object is taking. So using this context object, it is performing the database. See, as part of this repository, we should not have any business logic. You should not have any business logic. What logic? Only the data access logic. Data access logic means how to retrieve the data, how to store the data, how to, that is what you need to do. So get all async. See, I have not checked anything. Simply I'm returning the data. So get by ID async method, I'm checking by category ID. Add async method, update async method, remove async method, exist async method, and set changes method. See, there is no business logic. Only whatever purpose the method is defined, that what you need to write. Clear? See, see, when you are going to perform the update operation, whether the entity exists or not. If exist, what error message to be written? If not exist, what needs to be done? That is going to be the part of your business logic, not the part of a data access logic. Data access means only the database business related logic. Clear?
Yeah. Yes.
Right? So similarly, what I need to do, I need to implement other repositories like product repository. Let me go ahead and create the product repository. So this product repository also going to do the same thing, right? Same set of operations. See, so this is going to be get all, get by ID, right? While returning the data, right? As no tracking, if you use that is fine, right? Faster default, it add async, update async, right? Remove async, any async, and the set changes, right? So this is going to my product repository. So here, while returning the product data, I'm also returning the category information. So next one is customer repository. So customer related functionality. Let me go ahead and create the class file. Customer repository. It is going to implement the iCustomer repository interface. See, so get all, get by ID, add, update, delete, exist async, and the set changes. Right. It's the same set of operations. Then the final one is order repository. Let me go ahead and create the class file. Order repository. So you can see this is going to my order repository, get all order. I'm returning the order, customer, including the customer order items, product information. Similarly, here also I'm including all these informations. And here, see, here, whatever the logic I have written, so this is also logic, but this logic is related to your database logic. So logic you can write, but that logic should be related to database, right? Not related to your business logic. So that is what you have to write. So this is our order repository. So once this is done, next what we need to do is we need to register these services because uh, the service class going to use order repository. But the service class doesn't know what is the order repository. Service class or controller, they are going to use the iOrder repository. Whichever class implement this iOrder repository, that class method is going to invoke. But the controller or the service class, they have no idea related to iOrder repository. They have only idea related to iOrder repository. So how or what we need to do? So we need to register these services. So we need to register these services as a scoped service. Why scoped service? Because they are dealing with the database operation or you can say IO operations. So whenever the service dealing with the IO operations, then you have to register that service as a scoped service. So here, that's what I have done, right? So once this is registered, next what we need to do, we need to modify the controller. So let me go ahead and modify the controllers one by one. Now the controller is not going to use DbContext object directly. Controller is not going to use this DbContext object directly, right? The controller is not going to use order repository directly. The controller have only information about the iOrder repository. How that iOrder repository implemented, whether using ADO.NET Entity Framework Core or Dapper, whether they are communicating with the SQL Server data, MySQL database or other database, this information have right is unaware, not aware by the controller. So what I'm going to do is I will start with modifying the categorize controller. See now in this case you can see instead of a DbContext, I'm creating a variable I repository, initializing that I repository through the constructor. Now runtime framework, right? The framework will check what is the associated implementation class for I order I category repository. So this is category repository. So framework will create an instance of category repository. That is, it will create an instance of this class, and that instance will be injected here. But this controller class doesn't have any idea whether this I category repository is implemented by this category repository or implemented by mock category repository, whether they are using entity framework core, ADO.NET core, whatever. So this information is not known to this category. Clear?
Yep.
Right. So
Yes.
once you have a category repository, you can call the method. So which method you can call? Whichever method defined in the I category repository interface. So inside this interface, this 3, 6, 7 methods are defined. So these 7 methods you can call. You need all the categories. Okay, call get all categories. Right. And whatever the information written, please map the information to the DTO. Instead of mapping this manual mapping, can any other approach available? Any other approach, better approach?
Anonymous.
Yes.
Mapper.
Not anonymous, automapper.
Automapper.
Yes. We have already
Automapper.
discussed automapper, right? We
Yes.
have already discussed automapper. Please try to convert this manual mapping with the automapper, right? So this is get category. So this is get categories, get category by ID. So you have to use this method, create category. You just need to call this category.add async method. And once this is done, then you have to call this save changes, save async method. So until and unless you are not calling this save async method, that category will not be added to the database. Similarly, update category, first of all, check whether the category existing or not. So this is get by ID. So this validation, if you, what people are doing, right? They are doing this validation directly in the implementation class here. This class responsibility is not to validate whether the category is exist or not. So that is the responsibility of your service layer. So that's what you need to do. So check whether the category exists. If it exists, do this modification and update the database. So similarly, this is going to my delete category. Now you can see or you can observe. Now, does the controller have any direct dependency on the DbContext? Does the controller know what database they are communicating with? Does the controller have any idea whether they are using entity framework core or ADO.NET core or Dapper? Does the controller know whether they are communicating with the actual database or it is communicating with the mock database? Any information? Is there any tight coupling between our controller and the DbContext object?
No, no.
Right. So this is the benefit of using repository design pattern. But this repository design pattern, it is not the performance oriented, right? Performance. I mean, there are lots of code we have duplicated. We'll see. Let me first modify the products controller. So this is going to my products controller. I have done the changes. Simply, I'm injecting product repository and category repository. Right? Why I'm using the category repository? Because somewhere I need to check what is the corresponding category. Right? Whether the category exists or not. For example, here DTO I'm creating. Whatever the category is provided, whether that category exists or not, that validation, if you want to check, you have to use category repository. So that is the reason why I'm injecting both. Clear?
But Pranaya,
Sorry?
hello.
Yes. Yes.
But you are mapping in a controller. Is that the right way to do it?
Sorry.
You are mapping in the controller.
What marking?
You are doing the mapping in the controller.
For that purpose, you can create the service layer. Na?
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
We have already discussed the real-time application, right? So
Yeah.
controller,
Okay.
these things you can
Okay.
do your service layer,
Okay. Thank you.
right? So this is going to my products controller. Similarly, I'm going to modify the customers controller and order controller. So customers controller. So here also I'm injecting my customer repository. Using this customer repository, I'm performing all the operations, right? See, controller responsibility only to handle the incoming request, some validation, nothing else. That mapping, that business logic, you should move to service class. Next one is my order controller. Let me go ahead and make the changes. So this is my orders controller. Now you can also see this is also dealing with all this, the order repository, customer repository, and product repository. So whichever repository required. So for order repository, get all orders, right? For get order by ID, that is order repository. But while creating the order, I need to validate the customer. That is the reason why customer repository is there. Whichever product ID the user is selected, whether the product ID exists or not, for that purpose, I need this product repository. So accordingly, right, as per your requirement, right, it is not mandatory that you can only have product order controller means order repository. You can have also associated, right, related other repositories like this, right? So this is how you have to implement non-generic or specific repository for your application, right? So what is the benefit and the downside? So benefit we have already discussed. There is no tight coupling, separation of concern, easy to manage, right, flexibility, right, loose coupling. So all these things we are getting the as a benefit. So what is the downside? The downside is lots of repetitive code, right? So now if you look at the product repository, so this is what I am writing to get the all products, or this is the method what I'm writing to add. This is the method for update, and you just take this three method: add, update, and delete. Even though this is exist and save as thing. So this five method, if you check in product repository, and if you check in this category repository, apart from this entity, apart from this deficient property, rest of all are same or not? Method name is same, logic
Yeah.
is same,
Yes,
everything is
yes.
same, right? That means only that the category name is changed, otherwise the division property name is changed, the rest of all are going to be same. That means even though we are implementing a non-generic repository, but even though we are implementing non-generic repository, we are writing some repetitive. So this repetition, right? Repetition means the common operations. These common operations, which is common for all the repositories, like update, delete, exist async, save async, right? Add async. So these things, right? Whatever we have written, we can move this part to a common repository. We can move this part to a common repository, and that is nothing but your generic repository, and that is what we are going to discuss tomorrow. So we will discuss what is generic repository, how we can implement generic repository in our application. Then I will show you how you can implement what I can say, right, hybrid repository. Hybrid means generic plus non-generic. For example, product controller is there, right? So in this case, this product repository is there. So apart from this method, you want to provide some additional method: get product by category, get top selling product. So this get product by category, get top selling product, is this common for all the entities, or it is specific to a specific entity? Definitely, it is
Specific.
specific to an
Yeah,
entity. This is
it's
specific.
specific.
Yes. So this hybrid approach, what we are going to discuss, the common operation will be in the generic repository. Specific operations, they are going to be stored inside this non-generic repository. So how we can make this instance to be used together? That is what we are going to discuss in the hybrid approach. So once we discuss the hybrid approach, the last part what we are going to discuss is unit of work. Unit of work means how you can perform the operation by applying, do everything and do nothing principle. For example, in the order controller, if you look at the order controller, this create order, this object order, they are dealing with multiple DML operations, right? So multiple DML operation means what? We need to execute those operations as part of a transaction. So unit of work is internally or explicitly you can consider that is the transactional part. But that transactional part is going to deal with the multiple, what I can say, DbContext. So currently, if you see that category, right? Currently, if you see that a cost category repository. For category repository, we are creating a context object. So this context object is only no information about the category repository. This context object have no idea related to the customer repository. For customer repository, this context object is created. That means in the current scenario, each repository having its own context object, he doesn't have any idea related to other context, right? For example, if you look at this order controller, right? So here we are having this customer repository. So customer repository means it is creating the customer repository related context object. Product repository means product repository related context object. That means when the step changes method is being called, right? That step changes method we are calling based on the repository type. So you can say order repository dot step changes. So order repository dot step changes means it is going to deal with the order repository entities. If some other repository there say there is some operation failed, so those informations are not going to be handled by the order repository. So basically what we need, that unit of work means it is providing another additional layer. So using that unity of a repository, one context object is going to be created, and that context object will use with the multiple repository. I will show you that practically, right? You will get better clarity. But for now, for today, that is. Anyone having any question, they can ask. Anyone having any more question, guys?
Sir, yesterday I sent an email on this chat, but I didn't receive the files.
So what email you are talking about?
Yesterday you asked for email address, right, to send out the files.
See, email,
For
right, as
feedback.
I already mentioned, right, ping me in Telegram, I will share the document. But going further, right, whoever attend the live session, they will get the documents. Exceptional few members are there who are already informed me they are unable to attend the live session. They will get the document. Otherwise, those who will attend the session, they will get the document. Right?
So
As I can see today,
last session you collected the email
yeah,
address, right, on the chat.
sorry.
For the last session you have
So
collected
that is
email
what I'm
address.
saying. Ping me in Telegram. I'll share the document. Today, no need to share your email ID because I can see more number of 50 students are attending. So I will share the document with everyone. Right? Those days when the number of students is less than 30, that day I will take email ID and I will share the document to those members. More than 30 means it will be shared to all people. Ping me
So
in Telegram.
yesterday's document I already ping you.
Yeah, I'll share the document. No worry. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Sir, could
Anyone?
you share the document, yesterday document, like last class document, because I was also unable to attend the session.
Hey, just ping me in Telegram. I will share.
Oh,
Again,
okay. Okay.
again, you must be a right. What I can say, paid member, right? If you are not a paid
Yes,
member, you will not get the document.
yes, I am.
Yeah, if
Yes,
you
yes, we
enroll,
are
then you will get.
paid member.
Yes. Yeah. Ping me in Telegram. I'll share the document. Those who have
So
not yet received the last session document, please ping me in the Telegram. I will share the document. Clear?
what was the last session about?
Last session, right? That means you have not watched the recorded session.
No.
If I
That
total
was on Sunday, I think, on Sunday.
last session was on Sunday, and we have discussed some advanced filter technologies, right? So mostly we
Oh
have
yeah,
discussed.
yeah. Okay, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, filter means that a regime filter, exception filter, service filter versus type
Yes, sir.
filter.
Filter mechanism, sir. I attended Sunday.
Yeah, so that is what the session. So this ASP.NET request processing lifecycle. So these are the documents I'm talking about. So 3 sessions we have taken for the filter, right? Yeah. So those who have not
Uh,
yet received
Sir,
document, they
when
can.
will you
Pranaya,
resume the evening batch?
Evening batch very soon will start, right? Mostly a few sessions are remaining in the morning batch. Once that is completed, I will again start the session in the evening. Almost
Pranaya, please.
almost 95% of the syllabus completed for the morning batch student. Few sessions are there. Once that is completed, we'll continue our evening sessions.
Okay.
Clear?
Pranaya, excuse me.
Will you resume the batch from where we ended, or
2:26 o'clock.
how it
No,
will go,
no.
sir?
See, there is so this is the combined batch.
No,
So
I
where it
understand that combined batch, but evening batch syllabus is somewhere where you stopped from. There only you will start, right?
no,
Again,
see, you are taking me in a wrong direction. See, the filter concept, this repository pattern, I'm not going to repeat in evening batch.
Sir, because we are attending for the live sessions and you already know some people are leave me. I mean, about me, I am already going for an Azure classes in the morning. But you are giving an important session time.
the reason why. That is the reason why, right? I'm providing the recorded session and a document, right? And this is not for the whole session. Only few sessions are there. I'm saying. And see why I'm merging these two sessions. That is a reason. Reason is right. The number of students attending, right, is very less. Even by combining, I'm getting 50 students, right?
Excuse me,
So
Pranay.
yes.
Pranay, please. Next time when you have Sunday class, maybe it makes sense if you try to tell us in advance, so that we know we have Sunday class. To make it in the forum,
First of all, if you are talking about Sunday class, it means you have not attended the previous session and if you have not going through the recorded session. Because in the live session itself, in the live session, I clearly mentioned that we have a session tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. But supposing you didn't attend it for a reason like I went to work and I
See, if
come
you
back from work
see
and on Sunday
another
I
thing,
said,
see, if you are not attending the Saturday session and if you join the Sunday session, you will not understand. For example, those members who have not attended today's session, those members who have not going through the recorded session, if they join directly tomorrow, they will not understand anything. So better.
okay, yeah, but it's still good to put it in the forum that okay, we have
Yeah,
Sunday class.
that is
Then
what that is what I'm going to do, right? Mostly I'm
okay,
putting that in the morning before right, if something right happening on weekend, I will inform prior to that.
okay,
Sir, when will be the
thank you.
microservices class?
Microservices mostly will start right in the June end.
By?
Okay, thank
June
you.
end.
Okay.
So once this batch is completed, mostly I'm targeting by the end of this month, this batch, morning batch will be completed. I will take minimum right 15-20 days for preparing the document. So I have already started right preparing the documents, and then I will start the microservices batch.
Okay.
Mostly, like I have already mentioned, it will be start on June end, 100%. And
Sir,
it
what
will
about
be
SQL class?
useful, right? Currently, right, that is what I'm checking. Right, if I ask this question, right, out of 46 member, right, if I ask this question currently in out of this 46 member, I think 40 members will be interested for microservices. Only 6 members they are going to be interested for SQL Server.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely right, sir. Very correct.
Right. So for me, the priority should be given to the more number of students. If more number of students they are interested for right microservices, then I will start microservices. And 100, I'm sure more number because and another reason I have already told, right, we're supposed to start the microservices session on the 2nd of May, right? Because due to some